To whoever may one day read this, I do not expect belief. I am writing only because silence has become unbearable, and because I must put these events somewhere outside my own mind. If this letter remains unsent, let it at least stand as my confession. My name is Evan Lyle. I am 51 years old, a funeral director in a small Midwestern town. I have tended to the dead for over 3 decades, and I have always trusted that ritual, the slow order of the embalming room, the polished wood of the casket, the measured prayers at the graveside, was a kind of protection. It is what I clung to when I could no longer make sense of faith, or when the nights stretched too long. But this autumn morning, all the order I believed in failed me. It was a Tuesday, just after dawn, the air brittle with the first frost. Tommy Quinn, our 19-year-old apprentice, was helping me load the hearse for the Webb family burial. He was green, eager, still clumsy with his hands, but respectful. He was the first to remark that the vehicle felt heavier than it should. I dismissed it. Sometimes a casket seems heavier depending on balance or the slope of the ramp. Still, when I slid the rollers back and locked the load in place, I had to lean harder than usual. We drove in quiet, the way one always does when the body rides with you. At the cemetery, Melissa Gentry, my embalmer, was already waiting with the Webb family. We positioned the hearse at the edge of the tent, the sky low and gray above us. When I went to open the rear doors, my stomach dropped. The casket was gone. There is no mistaking that kind of absence. I checked the locks, the straps, every inch of the hearse's carpeted interior. Empty. Melissa's face paled as the mourners gathered, whispers rising like a tide. My first thought was theft, though who would dare in broad daylight? But then, Caroline Webb, the deceased sister, pointed toward the open grave. Her voice cracked as she cried out. We turned, and there it was. The casket sat neatly on the lowering device, lid wide open. No one had carried it there. No tire tracks, no scuff in the grass. And inside lay not the Webb brother we had embalmed, but another man entirely. His skin was gray but not embalmed, his chest frozen mid-breath as if the moment of death had been captured and suspended. His eyes were rolled back, only the whites visible. Melissa whispered, "That's not him. I never touched him." Caroline collapsed. I gave one order, as steady as I could manage: seal the grave. My voice left no room for hesitation. The staff obeyed, shovels moving with mechanical speed as the family sobbed. I could not allow them to look too long. I could not allow myself. That night, long after the cemetery gates closed, I returned to the mortuary. The prep room was quiet, only the hum of refrigeration units filling the air. I turned on the fluorescent lights, harsh and sterile, and froze. 2 caskets rested side by side on the stands. Both bore the Webb nameplate. Both were addressed for the same man, and both were filled. In one lay the brother we had embalmed, dressed carefully in his navy suit, rosary folded in his hands. In the other rested the unfamiliar man from the grave, features slack, eyelids fluttering faintly though no breath stirred the air. Melissa whispered, "I don't know him. I never touched him." I opened our logbook, hands shaking. Chain of custody records were correct. 1 body received, 1 body prepared. No second arrival. No delivery recorded. I checked the security footage. The hearse never stopped. No one entered the prep room. Hours accounted for, and yet 2 coffins. Dr. Neil Craver, the attending physician on call, refused to even examine the second body. He told me, "You're overtired, Evan. Stress warps perception." He would not look at the footage nor the records and suggested only that I rest. But Melissa and Tommy saw what I saw. And Caroline Webb,
Her face when she recognized both brothers, alive and dead, familiar and stranger, laid out side by side, is something I will never forget. I ordered the second casket sealed. I prayed over it alone, though I could not shape the words into meaning. I had it placed in our vault, under lock. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear the rollers creak, as if the coffin has shifted of its own weight. Nothing in 30 years of funerals prepared me for this. There is no line in the manual for a hearse too heavy, for a casket that moves itself, for two brothers where there should be one. Ritual fails when confronted with that which does not belong to the living or the dead. I write this now because I do not know what else to do. Perhaps someone will read these words and know what I cannot name. Perhaps this letter will never leave my desk. But if you do read it, answer me this. When a casket fills itself, when a nameplate bears witness to two bodies, which one is truly the deceased, and which one waits only to breathe again?
Hello, YouTube family. Thanks for watching. Big love to our subscribers. You keep this channel alive. Only about 20% of viewers are subscribed, so if you enjoy the chills, hit that subscribe button. It's quick, it helps a ton, and it means more stories coming your way. See you in the next one, if you dare.
I shouldn't be writing this, but I can't sit with it any longer. The smell of wet wood follows me even now, seeping into my clothes, into my hair, into my sleep. They'll all say it was hysteria, that grief magnifies strange details. But I know what I saw. I know what I touched with my own hands. The casket would not stay shut, and the water would not stop. It began quietly, as most things do. I'd prepared hundreds of caskets in my years at Fairview Funeral Home. Routine, methodical, antiseptic work, aligning the body, padding the features, arranging the hair, sealing the vessel. This case was a young woman, no older than 23, drowned in a nearby lake. Her skin had taken on that faint bluish cast, the kind that lingers even after careful cosmetics. I remember the faint mineral smell of the water still clinging to her hair, though I washed and dried it twice. By the end of that first night, she looked peaceful, her eyes closed, her dress pressed, her body placed in the casket. I sealed it with the standard locks, tested the lid twice, and turned off the chapel lights. When I returned in the morning, the lid stood open 3 inches. At first I thought Caleb, my assistant, had forgotten to check it, but he swore he hadn't touched it, and I believed him. He's meticulous, though less experienced. He shrugged and said, "Wood swells, metal bends." Settling, he called it. We shut it again, this time fastening every latch until the metal teeth clicked hard. The sound rang in the chapel like a final period. The next morning, the lid was open again, wider this time. The flowers we'd placed on the lid were scattered across the carpet. I bent to pick them up, and that's when I noticed the faint ring of moisture around the base of the casket, a darker stain against the pale runner. Caleb knelt to touch it and pulled back his hand quickly. "Cold," he muttered, "like ice water." We brought in a dehumidifier, checked the vents, even called the manufacturer about the locks. Nothing explained it. There's an unspoken rule in this work. Never let your fear interfere with the dignity of the dead. That's the oath I broke. Each night, instead of stepping back, I returned alone to the chapel. I'd press my hands against the lid until my palms ached, listening to the faint creak of the hinges straining, as though something inside pushed back. I began to feel watched, not by mourners, not by God, but by her. By the day of the funeral, I was hollow with exhaustion. Pastor Hart stood at the lectern, voice low and steady, the overhead lights buzzing faintly in the rafters. The chapel smelled of lilies and beeswax. Angela Ruiz, of Family Friends, sat near the front, clutching tissues in both hands. I had convinced myself it would hold. The lid was locked, the flowers were placed, the casket polished until it gleamed under the recessed lights. It started as a tremor, so slight I thought it was my imagination. Then the entire casket began to shudder, rattling against the bier with a sound like teeth chattering. The flower stands toppled, vases shattering across the aisle. Angela screamed, pointing at droplets forming on the lid, rolling down the polished wood like sweat. People surged to their feet as the rattling grew violent. The lid burst open with a sound that cracked through the chapel, and a rush of icy water spilled out, pouring onto the carpet, soaking shoes, darkening the pew legs. Pastor Hart faltered mid-sentence, his Bible slipping from his hand. The murmurs turned to shouts, chairs scraping against the floor as mourners pulled away. I stood frozen. By the time the room emptied, the water had vanished. No drains, no stains. Just the faint mineral smell of a lake at dusk, the same scent that had clung to her hair. Caleb refused to return after that, muttering about bad wood as though words could mask his fear. Pastor Hart wouldn't speak to me afterwards, and Angela won't return my calls. The family buried her, but I can't shake the memory of the water flooding through the chapel as though the lake itself had broken through our walls to reclaim her. Now, every night, I hear faint dripping somewhere in the funeral home, though the pipes are dry. Sometimes when I walk past a casket, I run my fingers along the seams just to be sure, and my hands come away damp, as though from morning dew. I don't know how long before it happens again, or whether the next casket will open itself in front of me, but I have begun to dream of her. Hair dripping, lips still, body floating just beneath the lid. If you ever find water where it doesn't belong, on the floor of a locked chapel, on your hands after touching the dead, don't ignore it. Don't tell yourself it's condensation. Because once the water starts, it doesn't stop. Tell me, if a casket won't stay shut, what exactly is it that keeps trying to get out?
My name is Travis Holden, and I've been a funeral director for more than 20 years. You learn quickly in this work that silence carries its own weight. The stillness of the embalming room at 2 in the morning is not the same as the stillness of a chapel at noon. One is the quiet of rest. The other feels like a pause before something speaks. I've always tried to give families peace in those moments, to close the distance between the living and the dead with dignity. But there is one night I can't file away neatly in my ledgers, no matter how many times I replay it. It was a Thursday in late November when the Harper family asked for a private viewing. Normally, I discourage late-night gatherings. It strains the staff, and the chapel isn't meant to be kept open past 10, but Margaret Harper was insistent. Her husband, Arthur, had passed 3 days earlier, and she said she could not let him go without one last night alone with him. Her son, Nolan, was less polite about it. He accused me of rushing them, of turning grief into a schedule. I swallowed my irritation and agreed. Compassion is the job. At 9 that night, I began the preparations. The embalming had been done the day before. I checked Arthur's features, cotton packed, jaw wired, suit pressed. The faint smell of formaldehyde lingered on my gloves as I adjusted the lighting over the table. When I leaned close to dab at his lips with mortuary wax, I saw it. The faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth, a tightening as though a word sat trapped beneath the sutures. I froze, scalpel poised midair, listening. Nothing. No breath, no pulse, just the steady tick of the wall clock. I told myself it was the settling of tissue, the play of shadows, and forced my hand to finish. By 11, the chapel was ready. The casket rested on its bier, lid propped halfway with a brace so the family could approach without strain. Candles burned at the corners, their light soft against the oak paneling. When Margaret arrived, veiled and trembling, she reached for her husband's hand and whispered, "You weren't ready, Arthur. I know you weren't." Nolan stood stiff at her side, jaw tight, eyes on me as though daring me to explain away her words. I stayed back, by the door, as is custom, present but invisible. The clock struck midnight, and the air changed. The fluorescence above dimmed, not fully out, but sagging into a dull hum. The casket creaked, a sound I know too well from wood expanding, but this was sharper, like pressure from inside. Margaret gasped. Nolan took a step back. I started forward to steady the lid, assuming the brace had slipped. That's when it happened. Arthur Harper, embalmed, sutured, dressed in his Sunday best, sat upright. His eyes were open, wide and glassy, staring at the ceiling as if seeing something none of us could. Margaret screamed his name, dropping to her knees. Nolan shouted, swearing at me, at the room, at whatever force was at work. I couldn't move. Every muscle in me locked as Arthur's jaw shifted against its stitching, not tearing, but straining, as though the thread itself carried weight. Then the light steadied. The casket rocked once, the body slumped back, and all was still again. By the time Officer Dean Keller arrived, summoned by Nolan's frantic call, the chapel was silent. Arthur lay as I had left him earlier, mouth neatly sewn, hands folded. We opened the security feed later, the black and white footage grainy but clear enough to see. The Harpers could be seen, myself at the back, the dimming of lights exactly as we lived it, but Arthur never sat up. The video showed only stillness, until the very end. As the timestamp ticked past 12:07, the audio feed, a feature I never use, rarely even test, crackled with a voice. Low, rasping, broken by static, but distinct. 3 words, repeated once. Don't close the lid. Dean shut the monitor off himself. His hand shook when he told us the system must have glitched, picked up interference from a radio. Nolan didn't buy it. Margaret clutched my arm and whispered that she told us he wasn't ready. I didn't have words for either of them. All I could do was reseal the casket and schedule the burial for the next morning. It's been months, but every time I walk into that chapel at night, I hear the faint creak of wood, like a lid settling against pressure. I keep the security audio disabled now, but sometimes I wonder if the silence is just holding its breath, waiting. I've built a career on the certainty that the dead do not return, that dignity is the final gift we can give them, and yet when I stand over a casket before the service begins, I feel the weight of that recording pressing against me. Was it grief playing tricks on all of us? Was it the mind's refusal to let go? Or did Arthur Harper try, in his final way, to say what no stitch could silence? I don't know. I only know that when I close a lid now, I hesitate. And in the pause, I almost expect to hear his voice again, rasping from the dark. Don't close the lid.